Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Anton Warrenchuk in Baltimore. The Israeli Defense Forces is calling up 1,500 of its reservists as it prepares for an expansion of military operations against the Gaza Strip. The news comes as 3 Israelis have confessed to the kidnapping and murder of 16-year-old Palestinian Mohammed Abu Khadir, whose cousin Tariq Abu Khadir was also recently beaten by Israeli police in East Jerusalem. Joining us now to discuss the latest news is Shir Hever. Shir is an economist studying the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories for the Alternative Information Center. Thanks for joining us, Shir.
Thanks for having me.
So, Shir, let's get your response to the latest news that the IDF is preparing to call in about 1,500 reservists to assist in the expansion of military operations in Gaza. Do you think that we're going to see an operation on the scale of Pillar of Cloud like we saw in November 2012?
I think there's a very good chance of that because, first of all, we've realized there is a pattern now that every about 2 years, Israel is attacking Gaza, bombarding Gaza, and this is for economic reasons as well as for political reasons. Now there are very strong political reasons because the Israeli government is in a sort of a difficult position. There are very loud voices calling for more violence, for revenge against Palestinians, for escalating the level of brutality. As the leading party is now in Israel is now in the process of splitting up, specifically about the issue of Gaza, Netanyahu is in a position where he wants to call on this attack so he can gain some popularity and appears a strong man. And more importantly, Netanyahu has been trying to use the violent events of the last 3 weeks in order to get as much traction against Hamas. He's very much concerned about the unity government between Fatah and Hamas and the reconciliation between these two parties. And he's trying to rally international opinion and Israeli opinion against Hamas.
Okay, and what's been the reaction in Israel since 3 suspects have confessed to the kidnapping and murder of a 16-year-old Palestinian boy, as well as news that his 15-year-old cousin Tariq was beaten by police?
This is a story that defies imagination in its brutality. Mohammed Abu Khadir has been kidnapped. He was forced to drink gasoline, and then he was doused with additional gasoline and was burnt alive by his murderers, according to the autopsy results at the Ramallah Medicine Center, which were later confirmed by an Israeli autopsy. So this shows a certain level of brutality that many Israelis maybe would have liked to believe is not something that you can see happening in Israel, but Israelis are human beings just like anybody else, and that kind of violence, unfortunately, is not unheard of. Now, the response inside Israel has been mixed, and I'm afraid that the voices condemning this murder and seeing it as a hate crime and that has to be severely punished are not voices that are heard so loudly and are not so much in the media. What we hear is, first of all, various attempts to deny that this has actually happened. In fact, the Israeli police leaked various comments or rumors to the press, trying to claim that Mohammed Abu Khadir was gay and therefore maybe he was murdered by his own family. Later, they actually interrogated the family. The media in Israel tried to confuse this case with another case of an attempted kidnapping and tried to say maybe this family has some kind of internal feud, so as to divert the blame away from the obvious suspects, which are right-wing Jewish Israelis. And it shouldn't really come as a surprise, unfortunately, because a few days before that, Prime Minister Netanyahu has actually called for revenge. He said, and referring to the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israelis previously, that he spoke about the need for revenge. He quoted a famous Jewish poet that actually coined a term in relation to the murder of Jews by anti-Semites in Europe, and said that the devil has not created a revenge strong enough to avenge a child. And Netanyahu quoted that, sending a message to Israelis: why don't you take the law into your own hands and start taking revenge? After the details of this murder of Mohammed Abu Khadir have been published in Israel, several alternative news agencies have tried to interview people, for example, the neighbors of the suspects in the murder, or just people on the street. And they found quite a lot of people who sympathize with the murder, who support it. This is a level of hatred that the Israeli society has reached, which may be unprecedented.
Okay, and what is the significance of Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman's announcement that he's dismantling the Likud Betenyu faction and will no longer be working as closely with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, this is another event that's not really a surprise, because the alliance between Likud and Israel Beitenu has been a strategic one that was predicted to be short-lived. The two parties merged just before the election so that they can possibly win more seats. Lieberman could enjoy the fact or benefit from the fact that the Likud party has a very strong electoral base. The Likud party, especially Netanyahu, wanted Lieberman on the party in order to appear more right-wing and more extreme, so that he will become more popular. But I think it was very clear from the beginning Lieberman is going to withdraw, and the question was the timing. And the timing, Lieberman is judging that timing to be now, because at the moment where the spirits are very angry in Israel, and there are calls for death of Arabs, death of Palestinians on the street, on the soccer fields. Lieberman is now believes that this is his moment to criticize the government from the right rather than be inside the government. He knows that Netanyahu cannot take this violence, or at least the state violence, to extremes because of international pressure, because this would look very bad for the Israeli government and could harm Israeli trade. So Netanyahu is bound to put a limit. And I think that also explains why Israel is now calling on 1,500 reservists and vowing to attack Gaza, because Netanyahu wants to marginalize Lieberman and show that he's right-wing enough. He doesn't need someone to attack him from the right. Lieberman, however, is calling for the ground invasion of Gaza, which means not 1,500, but maybe 60,000 troops on the ground to reoccupy Gaza. Well, Gaza is occupied, I shouldn't say reoccupy, but to take direct control over Gaza, because Lieberman says this will be the only way to deprive Hamas of their ability to shoot rockets into Israel.
Okay, Shir Hever, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anton.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.